This is Brother Peter Dimond, vaticancatholic.com. I thought we had come to the end of this, however, I felt that it was important to respond and point out a further fraud. After we posted our video on how William Albrecht lied blatantly about St. Jerome, among other things, in the debate on the new Mass, he recently tried to come up with a quote which he thinks or says substantiates his claim. His original claim was that St. Jerome approved or said was valid a specific homily that St. Ephraim used, and that he said it was valid for the consecration. And so the quote he cites isn't even from St. Jerome. It's from a Spanish book and an author who says that it seems that Jerome might have included prayers of Ephraim after communal services, before and after communal services. We already know that. As I pointed out in my article and in the last video, St. Jerome himself says in his work on illustrious men that St. Ephraim's writings were read in churches after the sacred scriptures. And sure, some of them, like his hymns, were used in churches before and perhaps after certain masses. That has nothing to do with what we're talking about. And this is the quote that he thinks proves what he's saying. It just proves exactly what I said, and it proves that he's a complete fraud. The quote that he produces isn't even from St. Jerome, and it doesn't have anything to do with a homily being valid for the consecration, let alone the specific homily he made reference to. But what's most amazing is not that this guy continues to put forward this utter garbage, this dishonest, ridiculous nonsense. It's that everyone doesn't see it. Most people do, but there are few people out there who, no matter what someone would say, as long as it's said with confidence, they would say, "Oh, great point." That really shows you the sad state of people, how dishonest they are, how inclined they are to evil, to not accepting truth, to not following after valid and logical argumentation. And so as long as he says anything, quotes anything about St. Jerome, "Oh, great point, you proved it." No, he didn't prove anything. In fact, the only thing he proved is that he's a liar and that I was right. So this bold claim he made, his whole argument that all is acceptable in the consecration was that St. Jerome said a homily which used all was valid. And now we know from his own admission he doesn't have such a quote. All he has is a quote, not from St. Jerome even, from a Spanish author who says that it seems that Ephraim's writings or prayers or homilies or orations were read in churches. We already know that. That's already been admitted. I already pointed that out in my article. It has nothing to do with the issue. And so I wanted to point that out. I also wanted to mention that in his response, the guy lies almost everything he says. Everything that comes out of his mouth, basically, especially on these issues, is either a distortion, a half-truth, a specious argument, or an outright lie. For instance, he says that I don't know what the PG or the PL is. I never said that. I know what they are. The Greek Fathers and the Latin Fathers. In fact, I make reference to the PL in my audios on the evidence for the papacy in the early church. He just throws it out there because it sounds good. And because he's a liar. And all liars go to the pit of hell. The bottomless pit of hell. This guy says that we are new to this material. New? No, we've been studying this stuff probably for longer than you even claim to be Catholic. When you were still probably a Calvinist or whatever you were, okay, we were doing this stuff. He says that most of the sedevacantist stuff come from Patrick Henry Omler. Wrong. In fact, almost all the people who are sedevacantists today, the supermajority, are sedevacantists after seeing our stuff. That's a fact. Prior to Most Holy Family Monastery producing the materials that we have, there were very few sedevacantists. You had some independent priests who believed that souls can be saved in any religion, who did a very poor job of producing arguments and especially evidence of heresies of the Vatican II anti-popes. And in fact, one of the most prominent among them couldn't even name 3 heresies in Vatican II. Most of the people who comment on these things, even the people who dislike us because of the truth we promote in the area of salvation and the fact that we condemn heretical priests, They became sedevacantists, almost all of them, after seeing our stuff. I could go through a whole list of them. We have people plagiarizing our years of research all over the place. People put out whole books just copying the quotes we've found. For instance, a guy named Simon G. put out a whole book just filled with quotes from true popes contrasted with quotes from the post-Vatican II quote popes. He calls them popes, they're anti-popes, which show the contradictions. And he admits in the acknowledgments that it all comes from us. And he deliberately put our website wrong. He put that it was holyfamilymonastery.com, not mostholyfamilymonastery.com, which he knows is false. And he did that so that people wouldn't go to our website and see that the whole book essentially comes from us. And it's interesting that this was circulated in certain false traditionalist circles, and people called the research amazing, brilliant. I don't know how you found the time to do this. Well, it's because he didn't do it. But if we circulate those quotes among that group, they would say it's out of context, false, ridiculous. But if it's the same exact stuff from someone else, it's tremendous. Another guy named Steve S. puts out books where large portions of it are just rehashed of our material. Large portions of a website he created is just copied from our stuff. And we're not talking about a few points here or there. We're talking about the bulk of the material. Okay, we know that people all over the place are using, points here and there that we've found, quotes, but we're talking about the vast majority of the work, okay? He even set up his own little booklet the same way I did, answers to objections, etc. And all kinds of other things we could mention. Okay, we've invested our lives into not only exposing the heresies of the anti-popes, tracking their every move for years, but also the most in-depth research of the papal teaching that's relevant, the most powerful papal quotes, the most powerful quotes from the anti-popes proving that they're not Catholic, all the angles of the different arguments, okay? By far, okay, the most of the best stuff there that people use, that people quote, came from our stuff. That's simply a fact. And it's quite interesting. This William Albrecht is quite upset because one of his good friends, after hearing our debates, actually became a sedevacantist. And this was somewhat interesting because this was a guy who was a friend of his. And so it's quite embarrassing for Albrecht, which shows you that anyone whose brain is somewhat working should be able to see what the true position is. And then another guy who was not a sedevacantist recently became sedevacantist. And he also was in contact with us. He obviously was looking at our stuff. Now, we said that we would debate William Albrecht on the heresies of Vatican II if he admitted that he lied about the quote from St. Jerome. He has not done it, but in fact continues to lie and distort on the issue. But additionally, I've come to realize that he released an MP3, as I mentioned in the last video, that is essentially sabotaged, where I can't even be heard on his version of the MP3 later in the debate, which I can understand why he doesn't want the people to hear what I have to say, because I'm refuting all of the things he brings up. And so he can't be trusted. And so he hasn't met the condition, admitting he lied. He didn't release legitimate audio. Furthermore, we've already refuted and debated him twice, and he has no credibility. And we're actually getting criticized by some people for not finding stronger opponents. It's just like William Goley, who has begged us for another debate, and we haven't accepted it. Not because we're afraid to debate William Goley again, but because it doesn't serve the position. And so we will debate Mike Duddy. If you can put us in contact with Mike Duddy, we don't know how to contact him, then we will debate him. But refuting you again, it doesn't serve the purpose. People just need to listen to the audios that we put out on which both sides can be heard. I would also add that our debate on the sedevacantist issue did cover Vatican II for some of the debate. The debate was over 3 hours, and we discussed numerous heresies in Vatican II. We spent some time on the issue of religious liberty. William Albrecht didn't even know the difference between the civil and moral right to religious liberty. He had no response to what I brought out. And in fact, I proved that Vatican II's teaching on religious liberty is heretical from Benedict XVI's own words. In his book Principles of Catholic Theology, Benedict XVI admits that Vatican II's teaching on religious liberty constitutes a counter-syllabus of Pope Pius IX's Syllabus of Errors. It's also in that amazingly heretical book, which I studied, where Benedict XVI says that Vatican I does not have to be accepted by the Protestants and the Eastern Schismatics. That's a devastating quote, and actually he says that very thing 3 different times in the book in slightly different ways. And those quotes are something that I brought out in an article years ago, and all kinds of other people quoted after they saw it on our website. And so I already refuted you on numerous aspects of Vatican II, and numerous heresies were covered, including the non-Catholics lawfully receiving Holy Communion. You simply ignored it. I refuted you with an array of points on religious liberty, non-Catholics being in communion with the Church, its teaching on Judaism and false religions, etc. And so you're not worth another debate. And even if we had one, you would again, of course, beg for another one after that. And so people should listen to the one we had. You've now confirmed by the quote you tried to produce on St. Jerome that you don't have a quote and that your claim was fraudulent. Check out our website, vaticancatholic.com.